This little memento was from my first trip to Maranello. I hid it under my shirt after dinner. I was 15 years old and I found myself at an event I was most definitely not meant to be at. I was supposed to be at school, but I didn't care. My passion for the Cavallino had peaked. The theatre, the drama, the pasta. The notion that a brand could mean so much to so many people. Then again, I had just watched Enzo's drive around the track, having sniffed around one Mr. Enzo's house. 10 years later, I drove my first Ferrari, a Speciale Aperta. I was reacquainted with one a few weeks ago, and a few weeks before that, I drove a 16M, JK's car nonetheless. So no, I'm not objective, but these cars aren't designed to be objective. They're for people who really just care about the passion.
These were built for people who care how a car makes them feel. In this lineup, these are the Ferraris made for the real tifosi, the purists, the ones who bleed Rosso Corsa and dream in flat plane crank. These are the lightweight mid-engine V8 specials, the cars Ferrari made not to chase numbers, but to honour emotion. This is the story of the Challenge Stradale, the Scuderia, the Speciale and the Pista. Ferrari's greatest hits, track-focused, stripped back, road legal, and somehow even racier than the cars they were based upon. Before the Speciale, before the Scuderia, before things got fast and clever, there was this, the Ferrari 360 Challenge Stradale. Launched in 2003, it was Ferrari's first modern attempt at infusing its mid-engine V8 with genuine motorsport DNA. Not a track car in disguise, but a road car with racing in its bones. Based on the 360 Modena, the CS dropped 110 kilos, gained carbon brakes, a reworked gearbox, and a sound that would rattle the sky. Power? Modest, just took 425 horsepower. But it wasn't about numbers, it was about feeling. The purity of a car that revved to nearly 9,000 RPM and wanted you to use all of it. No Manatino, no clever diff, just you, the throttle, and a thin layer of leather and Alcantara between you and the noise. The Challenge Stradale wasn't brash, it didn't need to be. It was precise, purposeful, confident, a low-fuss, high-theatre Ferrari that laid the groundwork for every V8 special that followed. The 430 Scuderia came 5 years later and arrived wearing gloves made of carbon fibre and intent. By now, Ferrari had figured out how to use electronics to sharpen a car, not soften it. And it had a not-so-secret weapon in its development, one Michael Schumacher. The Scuderia got a huge leap in tech, an electronic diff, faster gear shifts, launch control, and more serious aero. A naturally aspirated V8 was now pushing 510 horsepower and still revving to 8,500 RPM. It wasn't delicate, it wasn't subtle, it was angry, loud, and it spat unburnt fuel on downshifts like it was picking a fight with the tarmac. Where the Challenge Stradale felt clean and lean, the Scuderia was more fight than flight. It demanded attention and at times patience. But once it clicked, it felt utterly feral in the best possible way. Still beautiful, still balanced, but layered with a wildness that few cars since have recaptured. Then came the V8 special I most recently drove, and the one I haven't stopped thinking about since. By the time the 458 Speciale arrived in 2013, Ferrari had perfected the formula. It was lighter, sharper, and more powerful than the standard 458 Italia, but it doesn't tell the full story, because the Speciale wasn't just a numbers car, it was an experience. Ferrari's engineers didn't chase performance, they chased purity. The last naturally aspirated V8 in a mid-engine Ferrari, revving to 9,000 RPM and producing 605 horsepower, with an instant throttle response and a soundtrack that would bring tears to the eyes of children. Slide slip control helps you perfect the angle. The gearbox snaps through the ratios with surgical speed, and the chassis rotated like it was wired into your nervous system. As I said, I drove a Speciale a few weeks ago, and I'll be honest, I really didn't want to give the keys back, and that was after I jumped out of my Revio 997 GT3.
There's something about this car that just clicks. There's a level of trustworthiness, a connection that's defined by the responses the Speciale has to every single one of your inputs, from the steering to every gear change to the throttle input. It reacts immediately, and it might just be my favourite.
The Speciale struck a balance that no other Ferrari quite has. It has the civility to be daily driven, and yet the intensity to make your heart race every time you reach for another gear. It wasn't just fast, it was alive, and it made you feel alive. For many, including me, it's probably the best of the modern era Ferraris. And even after all that's come since, it might just be the one to beat. After the Speciale, Ferrari had a problem. How do you follow perfection? The answer, at least on paper, was simple. Add power, add aero, and add science. The result was the 488 Pista, a car with 720 horsepower, modern, near lag-free turbocharged response, and a level of grip that made everything before it feel faintly agricultural. There was a level of brutish force not yet really seen in the mid-engine lineup. It was lighter than a 488 GTB, smarter too. It featured underbody airflow, S-ducts, and traction control systems that turned even average drivers into minor heroes. But with it came something new: distance. The engine was quieter, the response sharper, but less organic. You didn't so much drive the Pista as operate it. And yet it was still intoxicating, still addictive, and still very much a Ferrari, just one evolving with time, trading some of the drama for devastating precision. So where does the story go next? After the Pista, Ferrari stood at a crossroads. The naturally aspirated V8 was already gone, and even turbocharging, once controversial, had become normal. Regulations, emissions, the future, they were all pointing in one direction. But rather than let that lineage fade away, Ferrari evolved it. This is the 296 Speciale, the first of its kind, a lightweight mid-engine Ferrari built not around a V8, but a 3-litre twin-turbocharged V6, assisted by a 167 bhp electric motor. A hybrid not to save fuel like a Prius, but to sharpen responses and close the gap between combustion and instant torque. The total output? 868 bhp. More than any other mid-engine V8 Ferrari special before it, and just shy of LaFerrari, despite using half the number of cylinders and having none of that drama. But just like the cars that came before it, this isn't about stats, it's about intent. The 296 Speciale is lighter than the 296 GTB by over 60 kilos. Its aero is wild. Fixed winglets, an active rear spoiler, S-ducts and diffusers designed to generate downforce, not drama. The cabin is stripped back too, simplified, focused, tactile, less digital, more visceral, and more importantly, no more touch buttons on the steering wheel. And even though no one's driven it yet, the ingredients are all there. The same recipe that gave us the Challenge Stradale, the Scuderia, the Speciale, the Pista, reinvented for a new era. Yes, it's turbocharged, yes, it's hybrid, and no, it doesn't have a V8, but it still follows the same philosophy. Make it lighter, sharper, more connected. Make it feel special. Ferrari didn't close the book, they turned a page. And the 296 Speciale, it's how the bloodline survives. And that brings us back to now, to the lineup in front of us. 4 cars, 4 chapters in one of Ferrari's most evocative legacies.
The Challenge Stradale shrieked, the Scuderia sang, the 458 barked, and the Pista, it roared with restraint. You don't need to drive these cars to understand, you just need to stand by one and look and listen and feel, and you'll get what it's all about. And that's what Ferrari's about. It's not just about how fast these cars are, it's about how they get under your skin. These cars weren't designed to be practical or sensible or logical. They represent a moment in time, what Ferrari thought was right at that exact moment.
Thanks so much for all the support off the back of our 911 Turbo video. It really means a lot. If you haven't seen it already, do give it a watch. It's a proper deep dive into 50 years of boost, bravery, and a badge that's become an icon. I'm Zaid, and this one was filmed by Ifti, and we'll see you again very soon with another story worth telling.